This is the Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Parramatta Leagues Club, home of the Eels, and also home of Jack's Pale Ale.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And it is NRL Finals Week 1 review. And boy, what a week of finals. There were some cracking games, especially that Brisbane-Canberra game yesterday. Joining me once again is Ben from the Corner Post. How you going, Ben? How was your Week 1 finals experience?
I think I need to take some heart tablets after watching, particularly that Raiders and Broncos game. We had some absolute classics over the weekend. We had a couple of games that probably fell away from what we expect from finals footy as well. We'll get right into that shortly. How was your finals weekend?
Yeah, look, it started off a dramatic game, Bulldogs and Storm down there in Melbourne, and ended dramatically with the Broncos and Raiders game. That was one of the best games of rugby league I've ever seen. There's so many twists and turns in that game, and in the end, the Broncos won it and got the week off, and now are into a prelim when many thought it was going to be Canberra.
Where do you have that ranked in your all-time great games? I've got that in my top 3, personally.
Yeah, wow, okay. Oh, look, I've probably watched a lot more games than yourself, but, the 2015 Grand Finals right up there for me.
Good shout.
Yeah, I think, look, a lot of people say the '89 Grand Final is the best Grand Final that they've ever seen, but I think 2015 pips it. I think for me personally, anyway, because in '89 I'd only been watching rugby league for 3 years, so I guess even though watching that game at the time, I probably knew rugby league a lot better, or I hope so, in 2015. So I rate that one as the greatest grand final ever. Look, there's been great games. Well, I mean, there's been a handful of Origin games that have been awesome. There was 2019? The James Tedesco try in the corner in Game 3. Was it 2019?
Is that the Ferguson match?
Yeah. I think it was 2019, I
believe I was at that game, and that if it's the game that I'm thinking of, I can see why you rate it pretty highly.
Yeah, I mean, that was right up there. I mean, for me, I love the 52-34 game Parramatta win over Broncos up at Suncorp. But, yeah, to say it's your top 3, that's a massive shout. What are your top 3?
I think 2015 Grand Final's a great shout. Very, very similar game to this one. A game that come down to a couple of controversial moments. I'll never forget as the world watched on with JT as he tried to take that sideline conversion, and he was willing it in and had the head sideways, looking at it, going, "Come on, come on." And then unfortunately, a man who's on the flip side of history this weekend, Ben Hunt, with the drop. I think that'll haunt his career. It has haunted his career to this point. I think that will continue to haunt his career. But if he can pull a premiership out for the Broncos this season, which they're right up there with a chance now, I think he might right a few wrongs there. I'm sure Cowboys fans won't be complaining about that one.
Number 2?
No particular order.
Yeah, okay.
No particular order.
One that you think
of? It's on the spot, but I just from a personal point of view, and this is probably very left field, the State of Origin match that we played at the MCG, where we broke the MCG attendance record. I was in the crowd that night. I was able to attend. I don't think I've had a better sporting experience than I had that night.
Yep.
For us to go down in there into AFL territory and to break that ground record at their sacred site, I think that's something that rugby league fans that showed up on the night can be very, very proud of. Having Para versus Melbourne in Melbourne that week as well was a great idea by the NRL, because that pulled a huge crowd as well, and it was a very energetic crowd and a very loud crowd. We had a very good competitive match played that week as well. As a whole, as a week, that was probably going to be something I remember for the rest of my life. Hopefully Para wins a few more premierships before I'm underground, and I can remember those a bit more fondly as well. But definitely that's up there for me.
Yeah, well, I must chuck in the 81, 82, 83 and 86 grand finals as well. You can't beat those ones as well. But finals, week 1 in 2025, they kicked off in Melbourne, that place that you were talking about just then, Melbourne, at Amy Park in front of 22,117. It was the Storm and the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs, they didn't have the best of records going down to Melbourne. I guess most people were asking about the changes that Cameron Ciraldo made with dropping Reid Marnie and adding Toby Sexton to the bench. Well, that ended up being pretty much a masterstroke from Cameron Ciraldo, because early on in the game, their captain, Stephen Crichton, went off with what is now probably a season-ending injury.
Unless they can make the grand final, is what they're saying. They believe he will be fit to return if they do make the grand final. So I think it's a pretty long shot at this point for them to get there. But you never know what can happen in footy.
Well, this is it. So as I said, it was a masterstroke because Toby Sexton came on, Matt Burton moved to the centres. Obviously, Toby went into the halves. He scored Canterbury's first try. So certainly losing Stephen Crichton early on, that was a massive blow for the Bulldogs.
Yeah. On that selection note, I actually hadn't really noticed that Marnie didn't play. I think they performed that well without him that it sort of forced you to forget him a little bit, which I feel like is probably a bit harsh. But I mean, he is moving on to the Cowboys, so they do have to start planning for next season at some point. Interesting to see if he does come back now. For the next week of finals, with quite a few injuries off the back of that match. I think we're still waiting to hear about what they're going to do with Kikau. As we touched on, Crichton is supposedly fit should they make the grand final.
I think Kikau's got a fractured cheekbone, I think, that he actually did in round 27.
Yeah, my mind races back to Sam Burgess on grand final day playing through the same injury. A great show that a few of our listeners might have seen, The Great Shawsy. A good quote from that show is, "You go till you can't go no more." And it is that time of season now where we do fight through those kind of injuries. I think Viliami is one of those consummate professionals that we do see that will not want to be spending time on the sideline. I think he will play through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty tough one. Pretty courageous to play with that during that game, and because we have heard that if you do play with that game and cop a hit right in the right spot, then potentially you could lose your eyesight as well. So it's a pretty dangerous one to play with.
Yeah, that's a fair point as well. And we did see one of the young players at the Melbourne Storm start to wear goggles based on a similar injury that he did pick up while playing through an injury, I believe. So there is definitely options there for Villy should he decide to play the match, and I think he's a tough enough player that he would want to be suiting up. Club doctors might have another idea, but I think we do see him probably at least in the extended squad until probably an hour out before match day. I think the Bulldogs will keep their cards very close to their chest when it comes to Villy. It'll be very interesting to see what happens there because he does have ground-breaking and game-breaking ability.
Yeah, definitely. The Bulldogs need him against his old club this week, which we'll get to later. Eli Katoa scored the first try for the Storm in the 3rd minute. The conversion was made by Nick Meaney. It took the Bulldogs 17 minutes to level the match through a try through Toby Sexton. So, again, a masterstroke from Toby for Toby to be picked. Matt Burton kicked the goal there. So, it was only, I think it was only, 14-12 at half time, so it was a pretty close game in that the Bulldogs actually took the lead in that game after Jacob Kiraz, another one coming back from injury and could be potentially under an injury cloud for this week, scored a try. So 14-12 at half time. What were your thoughts at half time? Could this still go either way?
I think that Melbourne showed enough in the first half that I was pretty confident that they were going to get the win. It had the feeling of one of those kind of games that you see out of Melbourne where they do sort of have that never say die attitude, which was evident in the final score. We were at the Leagues Club watching that match with a fair few Bulldogs fans that had stayed close by after the women's match. There was a lot of buzz coming into that second half, but I definitely feel like there was a fair few members of that crowd that sort of could see the writing on the wall, evident by the Crichton injury. I think the Crichton injury was the big air out of the balloon moment. He needs to be fit if they're going to win a grand final.
Oh, no doubt. Definitely 100%. I think also another telling stat that was crucial was against the Bulldogs in this game was 61 missed tackles. Now, you can't miss 61 missed tackles in a finals game if you are going to win a game.
Especially not against a team like Melbourne in Melbourne.
No, definitely not. It was basically, you can't do that against Melbourne in Melbourne.
That's arguably the worst place you can possibly be missing 61 tackles.
Oh, 100%. And, I mean, the Bulldogs, they came out after half-time. They scored the first try after half-time through Matt Burton. So they were cruising pretty well. But then I guess the telling part was Tyrone Wishart scoring, Will Warbrick scoring. I think that was an intercept try. I think it was about an 80-metre effort from Will, who's only just returned the last couple of weeks. One player that really did stand out for Melbourne, I thought, in a finals game with Jerome Hughes missing was Jonah Pezzett. What were your thoughts on his game?
Jonah, another great player. He definitely has a bright future ahead of him, I believe. Just want to circle back to Warbrick. I think he was probably close to my player of the match for Melbourne. He lit up the stat sheet, and it seemed like he was lighting it up, watching it live too. He probably had the game of his career, to be perfectly honest. I think that's the best I've seen him. I've seen a lot of great games out of Will. That's the best that I've seen him. I think he is absolutely peaking at the right time of the season. And he's making it easy for guys like Jonah.
Yeah, well, 294 run metres, and as I said, I think one of those was from 80 metres from that intercept. But
either way, there's still nothing to turn your nose up at. That's a lot of run metres, even without the 80.
Especially when the next best is 163 metres from Eli Katoa. So
it's a monstrous amount of run metres.
It is 10 tackle breaks as well. So
is that close to the run metre record? I believe Gutherson has that, doesn't he?
I think it's over 300 odd. I think Jason Taumalolo is still up there as well. I think as well.
Be interesting to see where that ranks amongst finals matches.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. But another controversial moment in the game was the And I think the hearts went in the mouths of Melbourne supporters, and that was the hip drop tackle on Cameron Munster.
Alleged hip drop tackle.
Alleged hip drop. Craig Bellamy certainly thinks it was one, and different rules for different teams. He's seen the same sort of tackle made by other clubs, and they've been suspended, but it hasn't happened in this instance. But what's your thoughts on that one?
I think it's a hip drop. I do think it's a hip drop. I also think that the NRL have made a subtle change in the rules heading into the finals, because we've seen a few similar incidents over the weekend that have gone unpunished the same way that did. So at least they're consistent in the rule. I am a strong advocate in clarity when it comes to the NRL rules. I think I like the way Supercars does things. When they make a change, they come out and they make a public statement and they explain it and outline it so the fans can understand it. I have no problem with NRL moving the goalposts across the season when it comes to rules and regulations and things like that, but I do wish that they would come out and make some public statements, feed some information through the media to help us understand what's going on, because there is far too many incidents happening nowadays in NRL like this one where we're seeing it black and white, but it's not being called what in a way that we believe is black and white. It's not being called in a way that we've been taught. Yes. From the start of the season. We're getting information given to us on rule changes and getting information given to us on this is the way this is going to be officiated, but then we see it officiated differently based on who the referee is. I would love a bit more clarity and a bit more openness from the NRL when it comes to things like this. Again, no problem with it being called that way, as long as you call it consistently, but it would be nice to know that is the way that is going to be called. I'm sure the players and coaches all get briefed on this when they have their training sessions with the referees and whatnot, but it would be good for us fans to be able to get some clarity on that.
Yeah, true. I probably still don't know what a proper hip drop tackle is, and I actually don't like that rule either, because, you know, players don't go out to injure players, and look, sometimes it's really hard for a smaller player to bring down a larger player when they're in motion, and look, at the end of the day, my opinion is they're just trying to make a tackle, and sometimes it can go wrong. We obviously don't want to see players injured. We don't want to see that, but as I said, players don't go out to injure players, that's for sure.
And at the end of the day, it's a contact sport that's played in full motion.
That's right, and there is that high chance that you will get injured in a game, because...
That's the risk that you take when you put on your footy boots.
That's right, 100%. It could be in round 1, or it could be in round 27, it could be in the finals. Thankfully, though, Cameron wasn't injured. There was one funny little bit... There was one play there where the ball was going out his side, and he just dropped onto the ground. It sort of just dropped and rolled. It was quite fun. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, but certainly Melbourne fans and obviously the coaching staff were glad that Cameron wasn't injured in that tackle, because they did play this game without Jerome Hughes and Ryan Pappenhausen, who are I think Ryan is due to come back in the prelim final, for which the Melbourne Storm find themselves in now, in 2 weeks' time. There is talk that Jerome will probably maybe come back for the prelim final as well. It's a very difficult one, isn't it? And you feel sorry for the players that have filled in whilst he's been out. Yeah,
well, I guess one of those players would be Jonah, as we were discussing previously. But that's your job. That's your job as a footy player. I'm sure these guys aren't going into the dressing room trying to tell Craig Bellamy what to do. I think they'd be very unwise to do that. I think if they just keep going out there and doing their jobs the way that they're doing, those opportunities will come to them. But it's the time of the year now when you need your big boys in there, and I think those two will play not next week. Sorry, in their prelim final. Yeah,
that's right. And the Bulldogs, they find themselves playing the Penrith Panthers. Some would say that the Penrith Bulldogs are playing against the Penrith Panthers.
I think the Penrith Bulldogs are coaching that game too.
Well, yeah, probably something like that, because there was a lot of cross players and coaches in both teams. But so yeah, they play the Panthers this week at Accor Stadium. So there'll probably be about 70,000 there. They may try and break the finals crowd record, which I think that Parramatta holds from that 2009 prelim final against the Bulldogs in a finals game, excluding grand finals.
And I think 1998 went pretty close to that record too, with the Para Bulldogs, that unfortunate game.
Yeah, I don't know why you mentioned that one. I have nightmares about that one. So
I think a lot of us do.
Yeah, so
a lot of the very, very large crowd do.
We'll just put that way back in the backs of our minds, if not gone. But the Penrith Panthers, they move on to the next game. The Penrith Panthers, they travelled over to New Zealand to take on the Warriors over there. Again, it was a full house there at Go Media Stadium. It was 24,524. Look, the Panthers, in the end, they ran away with it, 24 points to 8. But seemingly for the first 20 or 25 minutes or so, the Warriors, they were really giving it to the Panthers.
Yeah, look, I think, unfortunately, and I did call this prior to the week beginning, I did have the Warriors penciled in as a potential upset, which I think they went very, very close to. I think they can hold their heads up very high after that match. They went a lot closer than a lot of people thought that they were going to. I personally feel a bit ripped off on their behalf. There was a few Penrith tries that probably should have been called back for various reasons, one way or another. Forward pass being another contentious thing.
The Casey McLean try with the kick from Cleary that they let bounce, and then who was it? Was it Garner who got the ball and then offloaded it to Blaze Talangi? That pass there?
Yep, that's one that I definitely think went forward. And a great point that you just brought up is something that I have noticed a lot of this weekend: players letting balls bounce. What is going on there? There was so much of that across this finals week. There was so much ball bouncing going on, and I don't understand it, because we're taught from a very young age you don't let the ball bounce, because it can bounce anywhere.
Especially the rugby league ball, that is for sure. Well, look, it was a 4-1 victory. It was only 6-2 at half time, so it still was anybody's game. And the Warriors, they had their opportunities to score, they just couldn't ice it. One little incident that I did see was James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota going at it. I don't know whether that was a bit of white line fever and showing who's the boss out in the field. I think Fisher-Harris was trying to let him know that he was the boss over there in New Zealand, and Moses wasn't having a bar of it. But
a bit of a Jared Hayne, this is my house moment there, I think.
Yeah, potentially. But Isaiah Papali'i, he was returning to New Zealand, former Warrior. He got the first try. Brad Schneider as well. Casey McLean, as we talked about that try, and Brian To'o ended up getting tries in the end. The Warriors, obviously they were outsiders in this game. The Panthers, they've been there before. They've been there, done that. They're going for their 5th straight premiership. They are travelling from 7th position on the ladder to do this. Where do you think the Panthers will end up in this competition?
Do you want my honest answer, or do you want my Parramatta answer?
Well, I know what your Parramatta answer would be. You don't want them to win another competition. What about your honest answer?
I just don't want to see it in my own household. My partner's a Penrith fan, and she's been having a great time the last 4 years. Did actually meet her the year that we played in the grand final, so if that didn't break us, I don't think a 5th one is going to. But Unfortunately, I think they're going back there.
Yeah, okay. Well, they did this game without Mitch Kenny, their hooker, so I think he'll be back this week, back in the squad, so they should be full strength, and it probably will be one of the first times in a long time, I think, in this competition anyway, that they have all played at once, because there's always been one or two out here and there. I know Brian Tyler, he's been in and out of the side.
And you want Origin breaking up the side too.
Yeah, so potentially it could be the first time that they will be all together. But look, the Panthers, they just to have that finals experience. We've said it all year that the Warriors, they've been missing, obviously, Luke Metcalf and Mitch Barnett as well from this team. Whenever you lose your halfback, he was probably winning the Dally M's at the time as well. I think he was playing some really good footy, and it was always going to be tough to beat a Panthers side over there. 83% possession for the Panthers, so they had more possession. They basically outran. They had outran the Warriors as well, and yeah, so it was always going to be tough, but they got the job done over there. This week they take on the Bulldogs. Unfortunately for the Warriors, they are out of this competition. Just quickly, how do you rate the Warriors season in 2025?
I think they've had a season very similar to our own. Unfortunately, they lost their star player at the wrong time of the season. I think they were very brave. I think they can definitely hold their heads up high at the end of this season. I think, unfortunately, losing to Parramatta was probably where their season realistically ended. Not making that top four and not getting that second chance at finals footy was always going to not end in their favour. Coming up against Penrith at any point of the season is a tough job, but especially in finals footy. The crowd was very loud, and there was a lot of Penrith support in that crowd, as there is over in New Zealand. They were up against it for a lot of the season, and especially at the back end of it. I think they've probably ended where the form guide had them. I think the top four was probably overachieving a little bit, probably thanks to the brilliant rookie season of Leka Halasima, who I think unfortunately did not have his best game in this finals appearance. When they did get behind, he seemed to try to take the game over a little bit. That was probably ill-advised. Unfortunately, I think he's probably still got a fair bit to learn before he does try to take a game over at that particular level, and I think Penrith really made him pay, unfortunately. He's had some great games in his career. I don't think that'll rank anywhere near the top 100, 200 when he does eventually end a very long career. But that's a learning experience, and that is one that he'll only be better for. Good on him for having a crack. Probably leave that to your senior stars. Probably just needs to take a back seat there and listen to Roger and listen to James and those senior players. It's footy.
Yeah,
these things happen.
He's only young. It's his first year. I'm sure he will take knowledge of that one and moving forward into season 2026 for sure. Definitely a Warriors player to watch. The next game was another game really looking forward to. I must say, probably, I guess this game and the Sunday game was probably the games that I was really looking forward to. I mean, I love all finals games. But this one, the Sharks and the Roosters played at Shark Park. Now, only played in front of 12,842 fans. What's your thoughts on Shark Park as a finals stadium, first of all?
We had this conversation off air when we attended the NRLW match the other day. I didn't expect them to actually get that game at Shark Park. Small crowds often can create the best atmosphere. Sometimes when you're in a large crowd in a small area, you do get that sort of sound shell type experience where the noise just carries and it echoes through the valley. And
it? Reverberates?
Yeah, reverberates. That's the word I'm looking for. That can sometimes feel like a 20,000 crowd is a 200,000 crowd. And that's sometimes some of our best experiences in sporting. I think Allianz was probably the better choice if you want to line your pockets. If you're trying to just have the best fan experience, I've got no problem with that being at Shark Park.
Well, during the week, certainly Ronaldo Mulitalo made his thoughts made by saying, well, if the Roosters finish in 5th spot, we could have played the game at Allianz Stadium.
And look, we need home grounds. We need we need identity in the league. Like I'm fine with the grand final being at a neutral ground. Maybe we even set up in future years that the preliminary finals are at a neutral ground.
But even the grand final's not at a neutral ground, because if the Bulldogs and Rabbitohs make the grand final, that's their home ground. So,
do we maybe change things up and do like in the A-League where the grand final just moves to the home team every year?
Nah, because the
A-League have dropped that now, haven't they?
You lock out too many fans then, and that is potentially what would have happened in this game as well, locking out not only Sharks fans but Roosters fans as well. But look, as it stands at the moment, that's the NRL rules, and as Ronaldo said, if you finish 5th, you could have had the final at your home ground. But
I think the thing that we look at here is not to be moving games to neutral grounds or moving games to bigger grounds, but maybe, like I said, we do need some club identity out there. We do need clubs to feel like I don't like that there is so many clubs in the NRL that are sharing grounds. I think every club deserves its own ground. I believe the Rabbitohs belong in Redfern, the same way that I believe the Panthers belong in Penrith. The same way that I believe that Balmain should really be picking a home ground. West should be picking a home ground, whether that be Balmain or Campbelltown. I think the ultimate goal here should not be to be moving games to neutral venues. I think it should be to be upgrading these venues so that they can hold the capacities that we're looking for and that they can host these finals matches, because we don't want to see finals matches at small grounds. Ultimately, we want as many fans to get in there as possible. Although these experiences might be better for being at a smaller ground, it ultimately doesn't favour the league when it comes to the financial side of things.
Yeah, that is for sure. Well, Ronaldo Mulitalo, he certainly got the last laugh because he scored 2 tries up against Mark Nawangani-Tawase. Although Mark, he scored the first try of the game. He got the first laugh, but then Ronaldo hit back and scored 2 great tries. I think it was more from Braden Trindle's play rather than Ronaldo's, but he still had to score the tries. Cronulla, they went up 12-4 at half-time. They were pretty much sort of cruising and playing some really good footy. I think Nico Hines, he had a better game than what he has had over the past as well. But as I said, Braden Trindle, he probably was the player for the Sharks who has really stepped up. Toby Rudolph, he scored the game-winning try. Bit of a power run through the middle and scored a try right next to the post. Always a crowd favourite, Toby. The Roosters, they were probably a little bit... Well, obviously, they lost the game. Pretty disappointing that they didn't get the win.
Don't hate me for this, Sharks fans. I think this game was a bit of a case of the Roosters losing it rather than the Sharks winning it. the Sharks are going to continue to be a dark horse, I believe. I think they were the dark horse heading into this match. They definitely probably weren't the favoured side when it came to the larger opinion of footy fans, myself included. I actually had the Roosters making a little fairy tale run and getting all the way to the grand final, but obviously that's not what's happened. They did implode. They did beat themselves. They did try a little bit too hard to pull back into the match where I felt in the first half they let the leash go a little bit too long on Cronulla. I feel like they felt like they were in control of the match and they could ease into it, whereas they probably needed to go for the throat and take the game before it got taken off them, which is ultimately what happened. Sharks picked their moments, they picked their battles, and they won the battles that they picked. And full credit to them for that. Full credit to them. I think they have a tough matchup now, heading into next week, to continue that form. And I've spoken to a fair few of their fans today in store, and they are full of confidence in their side. And sometimes that's all it takes. Look at Parramatta in 2009. We came from absolutely nowhere to take that one on. By the form guide, the Sharks probably should be up there. But it did feel like the Roosters were going to boil that one over and take it. And ultimately, it's not what happened.
No, it was a pretty evenish sort of match. If you look at the stats of the game, 51% possession to the Sharks, 49% to the Roosters, 28 minutes, 22 in possession, 28 minutes for the Roosters. Completion rate was better from the Sharks, 79%, Roosters 68%. Run meters was pretty even, post-contact meters pretty even. The Sharks actually made more missed tackles than the... I don't know how you make more missed tackles. They had more missed tackles than the Roosters with 41, and the Roosters only 22. So that was a little bit interesting there. 7 offloads each. So it was pretty much sort of an even game. I guess the Sharks just took their moments when they were there to score points.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all it takes in a game of footy, especially in finals time. If you're able to stay in and around a game and just pick your moments, like Melbourne did in the game before against the Bulldogs, sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes you just have to pick the right moments to strike, pick your battles, win your battles, dot the I's and cross the T's. That felt like that's what the Sharks did. It felt like they did enough, and that was enough.
It was, and as you mentioned before, they move on to week 2 of the finals. They take on the Raiders, who we'll talk about next.
Looking forward to that one.
Yes, down in Canberra. So a tough job for them. They obviously got the job done in 2016, back in the day.
That feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly does. The Roosters, they bow out of the competition in 2025. Like the Warriors, what do you make of season 2025 for the Roosters?
A very similar story to a lot of the teams that we've spoken about today. Injuries and inconsistency ultimately is what let them down. They, I feel, were probably set for a far better season than the one that they had when it all came down to it in the end. If you had asked me the same question at the start of the season, I had them right about where they did ultimately end up. Bouncing out of the finals in week 1 and finishing in around the bottom end of the top 8 is probably where the form guide had them heading into the season. But I think by the time that period did come around, they were probably very disappointed to only be around that part of the ladder. They were looking like they were a far better team than what they ultimately ended up being. James Tedesco probably will win the Dally M this season, and it's very well deserved. Sandon Smith had a brilliant rookie season, along with Mark Nwanga-Nitawase. They have been tremendous finds, and not to go too off topic, but I don't know why they're letting Sandon go. I'd love to have him, certainly, in the blue and gold.
Well, there's one player going there, apparently, that hasn't been announced yet, so...
I think he's got 3 letters in his initials.
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't possibly think of who that might be.
No, I want to leave in his long-term club, but...
he might wear burgundy most weeks.
Or is it maroon? I don't know.
It depends who you ask.
Yeah. Look, a lot of people said they may struggle this year, losing those calibre of players like JWH, Luke Keary. Who else did they lose? They lost about 5 players that were of name. Chad Townsend, no, he came to the club this year. They used him for a couple of games.
They did have Tupou out for a long part of the season too.
Yeah, Brandon Smith, who ended up ultimately joining the Rabbitohs.
Joseph Suoliti going over to rugby union
That's
as
the
well.
one, another one that left the club at the start of the year as well. So, look, a fair season for the Roosters. I know a lot of their fans, including, I'll give Joey a shout out from the Ruck Infringement podcast. He'll be disappointed about that one. One of his other co-hosts is a Sharks man, so he'll have those laughs over him, that is for sure. And look, let's wrap things up with the last final that was played over the weekend down in Canberra. 25,523 at GIO Stadium. It was the Broncos taking on the Raiders, and look, what a game that was. 21-28 to the Raiders. Just hit me with your thoughts on that game.
In my notes for this match, I have just written 3 letters. WTF.
Yeah.
What a incredible game that was. That is going to go down as one of the greatest rugby league matches of all time, and it is a very, very big turnaround from the previous match, the Roosters and Sharks match, because that was one of the stinkers of the round, and this is one of the greatest of all time. Where do you even start? Where do you start with a match like that? Because that had highs, it had lows, it had balls hitting the crossbar, it had controversial penalties, it had everything that you can think of, 40-20s, 2-point field goals, or attempts at 2-point field goals. It had sin bins, it had players getting in each other's faces and putting a bit of biff on. It had everything that you want in a brilliant rugby league match.
Well, let's go back to the start of the game. The Broncos, they got the first try through a Reece Walsh assist, and I think that was potentially after his 40-20. No, that was later on in the game. But Katoni Staggs, he scored the first try of the game, and you thought, okay, the Broncos were on here. Shortly after that try, that's when Reece kicked his first 40-20. But then the Raiders, they got back into the game. A pretty smart try from Hudson Young. Jamal Fogarty converted that one. And then a little bit later then, another smart try from the Raiders. Sebastian Chris got over. They got out to 12-6. But then the Broncos came back, so it was like try to Broncos, 2 to the Raiders, another one to the Broncos. It was 12 all. This was 27 minutes gone in the game. As you said, it had everything. Then KO Weeks, he absolutely lit up the field and scored a try to get to 16-12.
What a tremendous find he's been.
Oh, absolutely. And a point of playing to the whistle as well, because I think it might have been a drop ball, and he's just picked it up and just started running, and no one's going to catch him.
I think a bit of what Canberra have done this season has been a lot of the formula of Parramatta's season turning around the way that it did in the second half. I think we are realising now, thanks to Canberra, that this has become a game of speed. And guys like KO Weeks have it in absolute abundance. When these teams get on a roll, when they get hot, when they all roll together, things like this happen. They have taken out the minor premiership this season thanks to that happening, thanks to their tremendous speed. and they are, when they're on their night, they are absolutely impossible to beat when it comes to these physical traits that they do possess. Now, KO Weeks came out of absolutely nowhere to become a superstar in the NRL, which I do believe he is. I believe he's a superstar. I think he's had a Dally M type season to give Canberra their first minor premiership since, I believe, I want to say 92.
1990, I think it is.
A very long time ago, regardless, depending on how grey your hair is. Where do they keep pulling them from?
Corey
Horsburgh, Hudson Young, KO Weeks. The list goes on and on of these phenomenal young players that they are seemingly finding in the middle of nowhere.
There was a little bit of a concern for the Broncos before halftime with Payne Haas and an ankle injury. It did look like he was going to end the game there, but he did get it taped up, and then he was on the bike at half-time, and he did finish the game. But that would have been a concern for them for sure.
Yeah, do you think there's anything in that tackle? Or do you think that's just a football tackle?
Oh, I think that was just a rugby league tackle, I think, and feet going anywhere and everywhere, and just the way it landed, I think.
I think when you're that big and you come down on that kind of an angle, there's always going to be a recipe for disaster. Payne is probably their best player. He needs to be on the park. Thankfully for the Broncos, if he cannot overcome that injury, I have heard today that Adam Reynolds will be fit for the prelim, which is a huge inclusion for them, with Ben Hunt having a wind back the clock type game to get them into that prelim final. Having a healthy Adam Reynolds, if you cannot have a healthy Payne Haas, is probably not a bad consolation prize.
Well, unfortunate news today coming out in the NRL world is Billy Walters has done his ACL apparently. So
that's tough.
That is very tough because he had a great game yesterday, and also over the last few weeks as well for the Broncos, whilst Ezra Mam and Adam Reynolds have been out. So he's been in that number 6 jersey, and if the Broncos are to go further in this competition, it would be a huge shame because he's been one of their better players. But
how do you line up without Billy?
Well, you'd put Ben Hunt at 5'8", wouldn't you? And then Adam Reynolds into halfback.
And then who do you play as your hooker?
Well, they've got Corey Pakes, I think, don't they, as hooker. So he's been playing there the last few weeks. So
maybe not all doom and gloom there.
Well, no, it's a timely return for the Broncos with Adam Reynolds supposedly coming back in a couple of weeks' time. Payne Haas, he'll have a bit of a rest, obviously, rest that ankle up over the next few weeks as well. The Raiders, they got out to 24 points to 12, a 12-point lead with 16 minutes to go. Just before that, though, that's when probably the controversial moment of the match, I would say, happened. The sin binning of Hudson Young and also Reece Walsh in the 52nd minute. Talk to me about that one. What's your thoughts on, first of all, Hudson Young being sin binned for getting in the face of an opponent and egging him on, and the Reece Walsh, well, was it a headbutt or was it a head lean in?
Where I come from, we call that the Glasgow kiss.
So it was a headbutt in your eyes?
I think so. I wouldn't go as far as calling that one the controversial moment of the match, because I think there is definitely a far bigger one coming up later on.
There is.
Especially if you're a fan of the lime green, a fan of the milk.
But what about that? What about the Hudson Young sin binning for, being in the face of an opponent? That's just ridiculous.
I'm not sure they've sin binned him for getting in the face of Reece. I feel like they may have sin binned him for what he said to Reece. Now, nobody wants to come out after the match and say what was said. the general feeling there is that whatever it is that he did say to Reece was enough for him to have that reaction that he had.
Well, I think if it was majorly controversial, we would have heard about it from now.
Yeah, yes and no, but it goes back to the NRLW match that we spoke of on the previous show, where there was that alleged bite incident, and then nobody wanted to come out and say anything after the match. Sometimes it does feel like a bit of a union when it comes to the players, where they like to just leave whatever it was on the pitch. Maybe this is an example of that kind of thing. Maybe they had a little chuckle about it afterwards and said, you know what, fair game, we'll just leave it there and not stir up any fish.
I know Joe Tarpany, he was saying, well, what, players get in the face of players all the time when they score tries, and this was sort of the same sort of thing. But
look, I think it's good for the league. I think we want a bit of passion. We want a bit of fire in these players, especially in these big finals matches. We want to see the biff. We want to see guys hate each other. We want to see the fireworks and the things that made footy great back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. We want to see these things, but then we also want to see them shake hands at the end of the day and go home and leave it all out there on the footy pitch, which I think this game was a great example of seeing that.
It actually, I think an expert said it actually did the Broncos a favour, because Reece, when he came back after his sin binning, absolutely blitzed it.
Oh, he seemed like he was absolutely full of energy when he got back on, didn't he?
Well, yeah, 100%. He kicked another 40-20, but he also gave the crowd his thoughts as well when he was running off the field. Probably not a good look. It's come out today that I think it was a $3,000 fine for the headbutt, and I think he got a conduct charge as well, fine for that. Middle finger salute to the crowd.
Yeah, I think Canberra's got another big red moment now. After Corey Horsburgh's debut game against Parramatta, where he did the exact same thing. He got, although sort of different situation that one. He was injured, I believe, in a tackle, and he had it given to him pretty big and large by some players and fans, and he let everyone know his opinion on that night as well.
That's right.
Seems to be Canberra getting involved in these incidents a lot, doesn't it?
Well, another incident that happened during the game as well was Pat Carrigan. He rushed up out of the line, and I can't remember who he connected with, but certainly got him a beauty, and he was sin bin as well. There is talk that he may miss the prelim final for that. What's your thoughts on that one?
I think it would be a disservice to football if he misses the prelim. I think he's one of the best players in the league at the moment. Probably needs to keep his head in that moment. I am by no means a Broncos fan, but I think we would be the fans would be the ones that benefit least from not seeing Patrick Carrigan in the prelim final. But in saying that, as a fan of another team that does often get the wrong end of the stick when it comes to the judiciary, I think we've all seen over the past that Brisbane are probably not losing Paddy Carrigan.
We'll just have to wait and see on that one.
Depends on how deep some pockets go.
Ethan Strange, he scored a try for the Raiders, got it out to 28 points to 12. Unfortunately, Jamal missed the conversion. It's a 16-point lead with 25 minutes to go. The Raiders, they were pretty much cruising. But then, as I said, Reece Walsh comes back on the field, Hudson Young comes back on the field, and then the game sort of changes from there. Reece Walsh scores a try with what you said before, speed again in the back line. It was a great little run from Reece. Got it back to 28 points to 16.
Fresh legs too in that moment.
Yes, true. Very true. Having 10 minutes in the sin bin. Karapani then scores for the Broncos, and all the momentum was with the Broncos. 10 minutes to go, 28-20. Another conversion missed, unfortunately, from Reece Walsh. Shibasaki then scores with 8 minutes to go. So the roll is right on with the Broncos. You'd have to be, if you are Raiders fan, you would have been worried at that time about what is going on. I wouldn't have liked to have been a Raiders player with Ricky Stewart on that sideline. No doubt he would have been yelling out abuse, that is for sure. I think there was a 2-point field goal attempt by Reece Walsh.
That was agonisingly close to going over.
That was his first one. That was the one that hit the crossbar.
I think we were all riding that one home. I definitely thought that was going through. I actually thought that one was probably going through more than the eventual winner that we will get to shortly. Was. That showed the level of talent that kid has. If only he could harness that and keep himself out of the negative headlines for some of the funny and strange and silly things that he likes to get up to in his own home. If he can keep himself out of the headlines and he can focus first and foremost on footy and not life outside of footy, I think he has the potential to be another Slater or Hayne or Inglis.
Yeah, well, that is the potential. I mean, he's only a 23-year-old kid, I think, so...
would you have liked to have seen... I know this is off topic, but would you have liked to have seen him stay at the Warriors rather than going to the Broncos, who had previously let him go?
I think he was always going to end up back at the Broncos, and... look, it would have been disappointing, yeah, for sure, to see him leave the Warriors, but...
Because it seems like that Warriors side is always just one or two bits and pieces off having the full puzzle, and it always seems like when they do find those one or two bits and pieces, like Eli Katoa, for example, who ended up at Melbourne, or Reece Walsh, who ended up going back to Brisbane, it seems like they do get away from them. Maybe with footy being an Australian-based thing, they don't tend to like the travel as much. Maybe they prefer to be based in Australia.
Yeah, I think it had to do more with his daughter, I think, coming back to Brisbane. I don't think he saw her as much over in New Zealand as obviously he wanted to.
Is this Reece or Ellie?
Reece. So that was, I think that was one of the reasons of coming back to the Broncos.
In saying that, in that time they were based in Australia with the pandemic too.
Yeah, they were, but still pretty hard in those times to do that. But and potentially that's maybe why when all the dust settled with that pandemic, then the Warriors were going back to New Zealand, and that's maybe why he was playing for the Warriors then, because being based in Australia. So. But then, yeah, the controversial, not so controversial moment, you could say, because it's in the rules. That is the 2-point field goal that Reece Walsh attempted, 8 seconds from full time. That would have got the game back to 28 all had he have got that. But it was pressure on the kicker from Zach Hosking. And we have seen it all throughout this season. Any pressure on a kicker, any contact with the kicker.
Especially the kicking leg.
The kicking leg as well. It is always going to end up in a penalty, and because it was in the act of attempting a field goal, it was a 10 metres out penalty right in front, which Reece Walsh potted over to get it to 28 points all. Right decision.
Right decision.
Yeah.
I have spoken to a lot of people about this today. I have gotten a lot of opinions, a lot of views on this particular incident. It's been the talk of the town, probably rightfully so. It is the controversial moment. There is one coming up that we'll get to as well that goes close to being the controversial moment of the match as well. But that moment would not have been possible if not for this moment. I think the general consensus of opinion out there is that it was not the wrong call because it is black and white. We all saw it with our own eyes. It is the right call. It is, should that be as harsh of a penalty as it was. Because as it stands, typically in the rules, you take the penalty from where the ball lands. Now, when a ball is charged down, there is no way of knowing where the ball lands, so the penalty does get taken from 10 in front. It is generally assumed that the ball will go close to the posts, as it is a field goal attempt. But a few people have come out today and questioned, if you took a 90-metre shot at a field goal, would you get the penalty from 10 metres in front? Now, I feel like that's a bit of an extreme example, but it's a point nonetheless. Do you think the penalty is fair? Do you think that taking it from 10 metres out should be the correct result?
Because it was a potential point-scoring opportunity, then probably yes.
And I agree.
If it's just a normal kick downfield, then it's pretty much where the ball lands.
Yep. And had that ball have landed, it would have been taken from where that ball landed. That's the interesting part about that. If he completely shanks that, and that ball lands 30, 40 metres out, then we're looking at a situation of a 30, 40 metre penalty kick.
True.
Which is possible. We do see field goals shanked more often than not.
100%. There was a couple in this game, actually. And I think the game obviously went to extra time, because that's what happens in finals, extra time, 5 minutes each way, and then golden point if need be.
Do you feel like extra time should be the normal rather than golden point? In regular games, yeah. There is other sports that do.
No, I think it should be a 1 point all draw. I think.
You reckon?
Regular season, yeah.
Football style.
Well, what it was back in the day when you get 1 point each. See, don't go to golden point. Just have 1 point each.
Okay. So there is a lot of other sports out there that do play those extra periods, and then if you get through those extra periods, you do go to some form of a shootout or golden point or whatnot. My personal favourite is the ice hockey system. Both teams get a point, win or lose, and then they do take that to extra time, and if nobody scores within extra time, they go to a penalty shootout to find a winner for that extra point.
How would you do that in rugby league?
Goal kick-off, maybe?
Start with your front rowers and go backwards?
No, I think in rugby league you do it the way that it is currently done. You do 5 minutes of extra time, 2 halves, and then you go to your golden point. I'd like to see that become a mandated thing. A lot of leagues and a lot of sports around the world lately are changing up their extra time formulas because they are all trying to find the perfect blend and the perfect balance. I think rugby league would probably be better off for adopting that hockey style where you do both get a point, but then somebody wins the extra point. I think that would incentivize us more to go to extra point, to go to extra time and golden point and whatnot. I think we win when we see more football. Us, the fans.
Oh yeah, the fans do. Yeah. Do the players though, week in, week out, like in a regular season? If what happens if, like, for example, Penrith this season, they had 2 golden point games in a row, so they potentially could have played 90-minute plus games.
Well, I'll give you a great example from another sport that has happened very recently. The Seattle Mariners in the MLB, which is baseball, they recently had 2 matches go extra innings. Now, for those who don't know, baseball match is 9 innings. You get a chance to bat, you get a chance to pitch in that time. Now, they had one game. They usually play 130 odd games a season, so they're quite often playing games on back-to-back days. That's unheard of in rugby league land, obviously, but that's the normal over there in the US. Now, it is currently coming into the playoffs in baseball, and obviously we're at the point of the season there where everybody's exhausted and sore and carrying injuries and everything. They recently, in the last week, had 2 games. One went 5 extra innings 5 out of... And now, bear in mind, a normal game's 9 extra innings. 9 normal innings, sorry. And the second game went 4 extra innings. So they played, in 2 days, the equivalent of 3 games.
Yeah, oh, well...
Just because their rule states that somebody has to win.
Yeah, well, I don't think that could happen in rugby league because I think it's what... They say it's the most physical sport in the world, rugby league.
I'd believe it.
So if you
I think
play-
ice hockey would have a bit to say there, but
Well-
I think rugby league's very close. I think those two sports
ice
would go
hockey
close
is pretty
for that.
physical, but skating and running, that's probably way two completely different things, I guess.
I think the MMA guys have just entered the chat as well.
Well, yeah, but...
But we're getting off topic with that there a little bit.
Yes, we are. But Jamal Fogarty, he had a couple of shots at field goal in extra time, a 2.1 and also a regulation 1.1. I thought one of them he was really short. He wasn't as deep as what I thought he should be, and potentially that could have attributed to him missing. But look, we'll get to that, what you think is probably the contentious point, and that is the no try to Jamal Fogarty, which would have won the Raiders the game because it was just before the extra point golden point extra time, I think, from memory. The game went for that long. I can't remember when it actually was. But the no try to Jamal...
I believe that was in Golden Point, that one.
Yeah, so the no try to Jamal Fogarty. Jed Stewart's gone up for the ball. He's gone to knock it back. Zach Hosking, he knocked it back to Zach Hosking. He then passed it to Jamal Fogarty, who scored next to the post. Canberra thought they had won the game. They had put the Canberra Raiders victory song on, I think, over the PA. I did hear the player Ricky Stewart's jumping up and down. The try has gone to the bunker. And they've come back as no try. Did Jed Stewart knock that ball on into... What was it? I think in the end they said it was knocked forward into a Broncos player, but then the ball went backwards. What's your thoughts on that one?
My mind immediately raced back to Parramatta Warriors. A very, very, very similar incident to the one that ultimately won us that match. I'm okay with the decision, first and foremost. I think that was the right call. I think once we got through a few camera angles and we got the telling camera angle, I think it looked the way that it was called. It was a strange one because had it have not touched the Broncos player, he is pushing that ball backwards.
Hey, 100%.
But the fact that the initial touch that he got was so minuscule, but it was obvious it was a touch, and then it does touch the hand of the Broncos player because it is going forward before it goes backwards. That is a game of inches, and it could potentially decide a premiership. That's the sport that we play. Those are the technologies that we have to be able to rule upon. Good luck calling that live.
Yes.
That was one of the ones that the cameras picked up that the human eye is never going to see.
Yeah, that's true. And that's probably why we have the bunker in place in rugby league. And then ultimately, it was Ben Hunt who kicked the winning field goal. It was a fair kick too.
Bit of irony in that one for him.
Well, yeah, it was a finals game, and it was for the Broncos. It wasn't a grand final, but it was a finals game.
And he didn't drop it this time.
No.
So congrats to Ben Hunt on that one.
No, I guess a lot of the Raiders players were potentially thinking that Reece Walsh should again have another crack at field goal, but it's probably right that it was a different player who did have this kick. I think I did hear on the Matty Johns show when they interviewed him that Ben actually did say to Reece, look, give me a crack at it this time.
He did overrule him, yes. I think Reece had a crack beforehand where he got swarmed and ended up having to almost be like an NFL quarterback trying to escape the pocket and avoid getting sacked in a different sporting term.
Yes.
He was scrambling for his life at that point, trying to keep the play alive and get that winning point. So I think when Ben saw the similar situation unfolding, he did call his shot, and full credit to him, he made it, and he made that by the most minuscule of margins.
It did hit the post.
I think it hit the post and the crossbar, didn't it?
No, I think it just hit the upright, shaved the upright, and went over. It wasn't the corner post.
But that is a great place to get some footy gear.
It is. It wasn't the corner post, but it was. I think it shaved the upright and went in. I think Reece Walsh, he was celebrating before it went actually over because he thought it was going over and definitely went over. And
You'd look like a bit of a goose if it didn't go over.
I did think that potentially Ethan Strange might have had a crack for Canberra rather than Jamal Fogarty all the time as well, but
they seem to have had a couple of chances to take that crack, and they opted on running the ball rather than taking the shot. It maybe feels like they potentially didn't have the confidence to take the shot after. I think there was if I remember correctly, there was a shanked attempt by, I believe, Fogarty.
The Raiders,
prior.
Yeah, Fogarty, he only did 2 attempts at field goal. So he missed one 1-pointer and one 2-pointer. But the Broncos, they missed. They had 4 attempts. Ultimately, the winning one, but only they missed 2 2-pointers and one 1-pointer. But ultimately, they got the 1-point victory.
That is potentially an area of weakness for Canberra, though, when it comes to field goal kicking, because it's with such an inexperienced side, you're really relying on people to just have a crack and get it. You don't really have a sort of like an Adam Reynolds or a Ben Hunt, somebody that's been there and done it. You've sort of just got to roll the dice and see where the dice land, don't you?
Well, this is it, and thankfully for the Raiders, they finished minor premiers. They get another crack this week against the Sharks down at GIA Stadium on Saturday. So obviously they will learn from that experience, and I would hate to see the Raiders go out in straight sets after the season that they've had. So that game is on Saturday, 7:50 p.m. And on Sunday, it is the Bulldogs taking on the Panthers at Accor Stadium, 4:05 p.m. So some cracking games in week number 1 of the finals. There's only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of the rugby league season to go in terms of NRL. So the games are getting narrowed down, that is for sure, but some cracking action in week number 1. The Storm, they progress to the prelim final, and the Broncos, they proceed to the prelim final as well. So going to have one prelim final in Melbourne and one in Brisbane. That's and no prelims in Sydney. So that's
and we have the potential as well, I believe, if I'm not wrong, of having a non-Sydney team in both sides of the grand final too.
Yes, well...
Is that a possibility this season? I know that's very rarely happened in rugby league.
Well, it is, because you've got the Broncos and Storm in the prelim, and then you've got the Raiders there as well. So the Raiders, if they are successful this weekend, I think they go on to play the Melbourne Storm. And then the winner of the Bulldogs-Panthers game, they go on to play the Broncos. So
we're almost guaranteed a non-Sydney team in the grand final.
Well, yeah, there's only 3 Sydney teams left, the Bulldogs, Sharks and Panthers. So, and one, or definitely one will get knocked out this weekend, and potentially 2. So... it might narrow it down to just one Sydney team left in the competition, but...
I mean, as a Parramatta fan, you don't want to see that, because you want to see Parramatta win the grand final every year. But as a footy fan, overall, I think that's a great thing to see, that we're able to expand the game out and we're able to have different markets other than the main priority market representing at the top end.
Yeah, well, I mean, fans will still turn up to a non-Sydney grand final. We saw that with the Broncos and the Cowboys in 2015, and I think there was 2017, there was the Storm and Cowboys again in the grand final. As a Parramatta fan, I actually was at that game, 2017 grand final. Trying to think of other ones that we've had over the years.
I think they might be the only two that we've ever had.
Yeah, and I know
that 2015 one.
Really worried about the crowd that was going to be at these games because they're not Sydney teams, but they certainly fill the stadium. So I dare say they will fill the stadium again if it is two out of Sydney teams. We'll just have to wait and see who's going to make it.
Who have you got?
Oh, well, after this weekend, you'd probably...
Don't be afraid to be bold.
Bold? Well, look, I think Canberra can potentially turn it around. They're going to have to do it the tough way. We could see... It'd be great to see a Canberra-Brisbane grand final. We haven't seen that ever, and it's the one that everyone wanted in the 90s when they were both powerhouses.
They're two franchises that have always seemed to have been good at the same time, but never quite matched each other.
That's it,
and made it to that promised land.
If we get another grand final, or if we get a grand final like the game we saw yesterday, then rugby league fans, they certainly cannot complain about that one.
Yeah, well, rugby league wins if we get another great game like that.
Well, if Parramatta's not in the grand final, then rugby league's the winner. That's for sure. No matter who plays in it. That has been the Week 1 Finals review. Thank you, Ben, for joining me once again on this episode. And where, again, can you get all your rugby league merch from?
Oh, that would have to be the Corner Post, I believe.
Westfield, Liverpool. And I have seen the videos over the weekend of the teams that are playing in the front there. So... stay tuned to the Paracave Podcast Instagram page and you'll see those videos as well.
Yeah, and we're constantly evolving the shop, as you do in business. Not only has the Corner Post become a great place for a winger to score, it's also become a great place for the fans to score. We are constantly doing all that we can to provide rugby league fans with great merchandise, such as the merchandise that we see here in the Paracave. Which is another great place for a visit if Para fans ever do get the chance to step in and say g'day. We're a store with a difference. We're a store that is trying hard to be the store for the community. We are doing our best to bring everybody some great and fresh merchandise, and we're doing our best to give it to you at the best price possible.
Plenty of Penrith, Bulldogs, Raiders, Broncos, Storm, and also Broncos gear, but also other NRL teams as well. So plenty of bargains to be had there at the Corner Post in Westfield, Liverpool. Proud sponsors of the Paracave Podcast. Ben, thank you once again for joining me. We'll enjoy our rugby league over this week and we'll get together again next week to review Week 2 of the finals.
Hopefully it's as good of a week as this one was.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.